Okay, team. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along tonight. Beautiful bit of rain on the roof. Hopefully, it's not too loud as as we present. I can't actually see myself as I'm speaking, so for those of you who can see me, if I've cut myself off or I look silly to sing out, you probably can't see my silly shorts tonight. But yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming along. The whole point of tonight is about spring releasing and for any farmers on tonight, they'll notice the last week or two we have really had that spring flush, which is awesome. But it's starting to put a pressure on a bit of the planting that has been done this winter. So, few key things, key topics that we're going to cover, which probably in more detail on the next slide. And it's back there in the background pushing this out. So if I sound like I'm talking to myself, it's actually her. She's a legend and she's done all the graphics for this. So she'll be pushing the buttons. So really just saying, hey, planting's just the start, but there are some things you can do in planting to make that releasing and maintenance part easier. Talking through what is spring releasing, because it's probably different things for different people. And for those of us who live and breathe it every day, we say releasing. People go, yeah, well, actually, what is that? Understanding different sites and the requirements of different sites. So as you'll find for anyone who's sort of seen me speak before, there is no single right way of doing things, and it really is about being sympathetic to the site and your project outcomes you want to achieve. Timing and frequency, again, pretty controversial. We'll cover off that in terms of frequency. What bad practice looks like in terms of failing to release plants. And then we'll just talk through some of the actual specifics of like what chemicals to use, what manually releasing a tree looks like, what spray releasing looks like, and how to achieve a good outcome. So there'll be a Q&A session at the end. There is a question function on the Zoom webinar. So just at any point, just chuck a question in there. That is there, isn't it? And I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think it says yes, Q&A button there at the top of the screen. So just hit the Q&A thing if I'm talking about something you go, hey, Adam, what the hell is that? We might be able to answer a few of them as we go along. And I'll hang about at the end and we can have a decent chat then as well. So, yeah, we'll be into it. Cool. So who am I? For those of you who don't know me, I'm the guy who wears silly shorts and doesn't have a lot of hair, but freaking loves trees and will chew people's ear off about them. So I guess, yeah, how's Annette describe this? An advocate for returning birdsong and biodiversity to unproductive land. And that's us, like I love being involved with farmers doing really cool projects, and I'm a bird nerd and a tree nerd, so I love that. We've got a farm here, 100 hectares at Temero, and this is where the nursery is based. We've got some really awesome conservation projects here on our farm, but in the wider community as well. And yeah, really for me, it's just about making it easy for farmers. So and that's where we roll into Restore Native and what it is about. So there's our unconventional family, and just people I absolutely love going to work with every day. And really, yeah, we're here to break down barriers to make it easier for people to achieve native restoration. So answer questions for people, provide good quality plants at a good reasonable price, and provide full service, whether that's weed control, pest control. Obviously, plant supply is our main thing. We have a massive planting service. I think we've just finishing up planting for the year, about 450,000 plants for the year. And now we're into this releasing, which is where we are today. So we cover across the Waikato Bay of Plenty, and we ship trees all over the North Island, a range of different size of plants. So yeah, that's us. If we can help you or anyone out there, yeah, it makes the world go around. Now here is James. James is a legend. For those of you who haven't met him, he's our site operations manager. Planting a tree there, and this is the bit where it's not just about planting. So there's Hannah planting a tree, for those of you who know her, a nursery manager. So the big thing is like people see the cost of a plant, but it's only part of the process. And I try and stress that when we're doing our planning is, we see classic situations where people go, oh, I've picked up these cheap trees and, oh, yeah, chuck them in, it's all good. And they get a really disappointing result. And it's like, it's not just the tree, it's not just the planting, it's everything that goes around it. So, Maintenance might only be 10% of the total cost, but it can be the thing that actually sets you up for success or failure. And that's what we're going to go into detail on as we go through this. I'm going to start with spot spraying. So this is, it's an important part of setting up that spring release. And the big thing is that, like, if you go to sites that haven't been spot sprayed, probably by now, by the start of October, they'll often be covered in grass already. The plants are being lost, or they're hard to identify. They're hard to come back to those trees and find them. Even with a trained eye, it can be hard to spot a small tree in amongst long grass. So spot spraying is just about nurturing that baby through its toddler phase and allowing it basically a little sort of well of freedom to be able to grow in and get established. I talked there about the combination of herbicides used. So we use Turb, which has a residual, it's basically a residual herbicide that stops, that sort of instant germination of everything in spring, which sort of that lushness to come back and swamp a plant. If you can pre-spray, it just creates a longer window in spring for you to come and do that release spray. If you can, and if you think about this in terms of timing, we'll often get away with one release because what we're doing is that Turb is holding that germination of new sort of weeds and grass back. That means we can release later into the spring, which means that you can actually get one whack of the spring grass and hold that down through into the summer period. So, we're always looking for ways to try and be a bit more efficient. And it's a really important thing getting that sort of pre-spray right to help the release, not even mentioning the benefits of it in terms of planting. So we start there. What is spring releasing and why it matters? So there's a guy standing in a paddock of trees. How good. So yeah, simple thing is we're planting seedlings, and as you can see the picture of me there, that tree's probably 600-700 mils high. Early spring, not a lot of growth around it, but as we come into mid-spring, grass, weeds, everything just sort of shoots up around that and smothers it, takes away the water, nutrients, light, and can smother trees. And a lot of people go, oh, which plant a bigger grade? We don't have to worry about releasing so much. Like grass can grow pretty big and it can collapse, it can drag trees down. Some trees less susceptible than others, and we'll talk about that later as well. But in terms of setting that tree up for success, a really simple way of just controlling that vegetation in the little sort of dome around that tree. So this is a really good example of what a maintained site and a non-maintained site look like. So yeah, looking on the left, and it's a little bit hard because of the aspect we've taken this at, but you can see the dead spots and the trees in them. So that's been pre-sprayed, it's been released. This photo was taken in about November. And you can see those trees just happy as Larry. The growth that's come through is actually laid down next to the trees as a bit of a mulch. And they're just in their own little microclimate, and they're able to get on and just establish well. On the right-hand side, another farm actually just down the road from this one. That was not pre-sprayed at all. And then we got the classic phone call as we get at that time of the year, hey, I can't find my trees anymore. So we'll talk through a bit later about how we try to avoid that, but it's sort of almost too late at this point there. You can't let your plants get completely overgrown. You actually need to be there at the right time, because at this point, you're not going to find all those trees, and trees are going to be dying, and under there, soft stem trees will be getting dragged down. It's hard to believe that even had trees in it, but the grass there is sort of well up over 1/2 meter tall and dragging everything down. So understanding the site. So every site's different. And for those of you who have been in our webinars before, you'll see this graphic that we've got. And it's really talking about how different areas across a landscape require different approaches, not only to plants and species selection, but to how you're releasing them as well. So fertile versus infertile ground, classic one there being, like dry, infertile hillsides. You're not going to get that lush grass coming back and swamping plants. So I talked there in that point 3 about the plant type. We do a lot of sort of Manuka Kānuka with Tōtara into hill country sites. And where there's low fertility, you can actually get away without releasing those plants at all. Manuka and Kanuka have a real hard woody stem. They've planted in a good grade. They've got thin leaves, so they can deal with coming up through that grass. They don't get dragged down because they're quite tough. And obviously, there's not the same swamp of grass on those hillsides, so they can actually do really well. However, if you're in those riparian zones where it stays moist over summer, it's you're going to be getting a lot of vegetative growth, really fertile areas, dairy farms, and you're going to have a lot of vegetation competition. So you've got to tailor your plan of how you're going to maintain, and you can identify that before you're planting. So you've got a plan in place to attack it right in that sense. Now, monitoring is key. We go back to that one I say I got the phone call. Hey, look, Adam, my plants have been swamped. That's actually not where you want to be. You want to be making sure you're hitting the plant at the right time and keeping an eye on it. So it's hard in springtime, especially on farms when there's a lot going on, but timing is key in that. So we'll talk a bit more about that too. So grasses. So this is a really interesting one. James wanted to chuck this in here because it's real. Like, not every site is going to have every one of these challenges, but it's important to know certain species of grass are just crazy. You see Yorkshire fog coming through in some of those swampy areas, and it's growing chest height. Something that hasn't been released early in there is just not going to stand a chance. Kaiku is thick and dense and crawls all over everything. And then paspalum's that sort of rush back in January often for us here, where you can spray and then 3 weeks later it's full of paspalum again. It may not be impacting a lot of the plants, so you've got to kind of make a call on how to approach it. But yeah, it's not just ryegrass and it's not just weeds. It's sort of again site specific, plant specific, how you actually approach your plan to put a plan together. Cool. So I think this is the most important thing we're going to talk about tonight: timing and frequency. Again, it's different for everyone, but timing is key. So actually, do you want to skip back to that where we were in it? Sorry. You can see this release being done on this tree here. It's an aki, and the grass is sort of starting to grow back in this block, but it's not swamping over the trees yet. There are obviously still a little bit of dead there in and around that plant. That's optimal time for releasing, and it's actually a really good photo to sort of show it. And we show a little bit more on that next slide as well. On the left, you can see, sorry, my screen's a bit small. It's either a Manuka or a Kanuka on that left one. It's starting to get a bit of growth around it, but you can see there's still a little bit of dead around the spot. The tree's not covered. It's a good time to be releasing it. On the right-hand side, you really have to squint to find that there's actually a tree living in there. And if you're having to search for every plant, the labor cost is higher. But also if they've been covered, you're at that point, you're starting to risk. So timing's key. So the way we run our release program with Restore Native, we don't sort of just plant the jobs in order and then go back and release them in order after that. If there are any of our customers online, you'll know that we sort of work quite collaboratively, and that will come into a visit of most of our sites. And James has been doing those over the last few weeks. And then we'll just keep in comms with the landowner. They're going to be driving past that planting. Hey, let us know when it's greening up. Let us know when there's a bit of growth coming in those spots. Let us know when you see in the most fertile areas the picture on the left there, and then we'll get there when we need to get there, because we don't want to go too soon. We're not in the business of spraying bare dirt, and that's kind of been, unfortunately, something that's happened in the industry, especially with some, how do I put this, out-of-town nurseries who just run a crew down the island and just kind of do it regardless of whether it's ready or not. I think timing is key, and again, because you might actually save the cost of a second release if you time it to perfection, but you get in there at the right time. So that the simple aim is when the tree is halfway up the plant, when the grass is halfway up the plant, you want to spray that grass, get it killed, get it laid down, and you're creating the perfect environment for that plant to continue growing without that competition. So yeah, timing and monitoring are key, but if we use that rule, halfway up the plant, spray it, bang on. So that's how we sort of want to approach it. Have a quick drink. So frequency. Um, for us, most sites, we're finding actually one well-timed release will actually achieve what it needs to achieve. Plants going in the ground at that sort of 600 mil tall, getting that release, they're getting that growth through the spring. By sort of midsummer, they're up, they're up sort of 800 or more. By the end of summer, they're up to sort of a meter. And you're going to find that actually, cool, nailed it. They've beaten the grass at that point. By the time next season comes around, they're sorted. Um, if we get a really growthy summer, had a couple of really wet summers. Last summer was a really interesting one, actually, because we got a heap of rain over Christmas. And all of a sudden in January, we needed to be back out releasing a lot of our more fertile sites for a second time. And I think, again, like planning is responding to what you're seeing in front of you. It isn't sort of going, hey, we've got a calendar. Well, this is what I've always done. It's actually every site is different and responding to that, to what you're seeing. So um, I will say there, sensitive sites, a lot of competing vegetation or slow growing trees. If you're putting a remu in the ground, it's gonna sit still for a couple of years and do nothing. So it's going to need a lot more care than a manuka that's, again, hard stem, grows fast, races away. So second and subsequent releasing, you may not be releasing every plant. Once something's sort of at hip height, it's not really in danger of the vegetation that's around it, and you can go through and selectively release what needs to be released. If you're getting something like WRA funding, where they'll be recommending 5 release sprays, like a really good program, and that's like an absolute gold standard. You won't lose anything to smothering if you're doing 2 releases a year for the first 2 years and 1 the following. But not every site needs that. So it's about being sympathetic to what you're seeing in front of you. And again, it's not cookie cutter, but there are those things, like I say, slow growing trees. They're going to need more visually sensitive areas, where you want it to look pretty. It's right by the farm track, or it's out the back of your lifestyle block, or it's in a public area. Yep. Put some extra money into releasing a bit more often. And yeah, just be mindful of the season and what is actually required on your site as well. Now, what does bad practice look like? This is always a good one. A couple of photos here. So, yeah, the classic thing is you just don't want to be in the situation where you've lost your trees, and unfortunately every year it happens, no matter how much I sort of push it out there to people going, we can come release spray in October and November, let's do it. Someone will get to Christmas and go, I can't find my trees anymore. And we get it, life's busy, especially on farm in spring, but yeah, there's often not a lot coming back for those plants. Like we say, the hardy things, manuka and kanuka, might still push through. Sensitive things like karamu gets dragged down. You see cabbage trees and stuff just get smothered out altogether. You'll lose a lot of those species, and those are actually really important species in your planting, because they'll often be the fruiting species, the things that allow that sort of subsequent succession. So it's important to see that as well. Yeah, there's a really good example there of just trees in the grass. So yeah, it's, I guess, what I'm trying to stress by putting this sort of stuff out here tonight, and hoping everyone who joins shares it with someone that hey, think about what maintenance is a part of your program. It's not just chucking a tree in the ground. You can waste a lot of money. Like I say, slow growth or patchy survival. Only the hardy survive, but not those potentially more ecologically significant plants are not going to survive. And a big thing to remember too, when you're going back to infill plantings, the success rates are lower. You're either going to have to put in a larger grade tree to get a good success rate, and the planting labor is significantly more. You have to carry trees through the whole block to find the gaps to put them in. It just pays to do it right the first time. So yeah, it's like anything. There's no shortcut. Just planning well and executing well. Now, manual versus spray release. This is a really interesting one. Some people swear just by a manual release. Yeah, you'll see that for us, that is not what we practice. but there is a place for both. So a manual release is literally coming to the plant, grabbing the grass, pulling it away, laying it down. Um, and some people will stomp on it. Some will just go, "Oh no, we've given it a bit of a pull away. Away we go." Um, the pull away release works quite well if you've got grass that's already seeded and essentially so it's gone reproductive. It's not going to be producing any more lush grass. If you time that and you pull it away, it's going to actually stay there if you especially stamp it down and break it. And that's going to keep it off your plant. If that grass is still vegetative, like so, it's in that spring flushy growth period and you pull it away, if you come back 10 days later, that grass will have grown up again. It's growing that fast. It's in that sort of, hey, I'm producing heaps of vegetation. A manual release just isn't enough. Yeah, and we see it all the time. Some people swear by, just manual release works. It's like, yep. There's also a cost and time factor to it. So we're coming at it from a point of view of larger scale projects and where people don't have the time to go out and put their hands on every single tree a number of times to make sure they get a good outcome. Cost economic, as us as a third party doing it. So where the plants have actually been overtopped by grass, we'll pull that away, stand on it, and then we'll spray a circle around that tree. We think the combination of both is really good. You can see the one that I'm sort of leaning down next to around that tree, just simply spraying around that and killing the vegetation, absolutely bang on to achieve a result there. So I just had a question there, it might be relevant to what we're doing. One of the groups I'm working with want to use stomping as a release strategy. Published effectiveness on this approach, or is this a poor return on investment? Hey, thanks for that. I really appreciate the question. I'm not sure about published research on it. Look, as I say, there's some simple science there, and what I talk about, if a plant has gone through its vegetative state, so it's no longer producing rapid vegetation, stomping is really effective. And clearing away. It's not stopping the grass from sucking the moisture out from around that tree, but it will clear that from it. So it's achieving sort of half of what the spray would. But yeah, if it's vegetative, the grass is growing quickly, you stomp it out of the way, go back and have a look at it in a few weeks' time. It's not achieving what a spray knockdown would. Don't get me wrong, there's poorly executed spraying as well. People will just spray bare dirt and call it a release. It's like, what a waste of time and money. You obviously have a risk with drift when you're spraying or overspraying the plant. So there is a chemical risk factor to that as well. But yeah, like ultimately, you want to clear that plant, get what's around it dead. The ideal timing means that you're laying down a compost layer. Some people say if you spray it, it dries out in summer. But if you're laying down that vegetation, you're actually creating its own mulch. So yeah, I firmly in the favour in that from our experience. We have seen both in play, and we really support the release spray. Yeah, it's as simple as that. There's an investment in quality equipment. Actually, we went back to that last one in it. Investment in quality equipment's key. Like you can see Gerard there in that picture is using, we've got these still battery powered knapsacks. So they're $1,000 a pop. I would love to do it with $150 solo knapsack, but the reality is, with the battery power, you can get a consistent flow rate, which means that our guys can be a lot more accurate with the fan on their spraying. So that's a material investment. There's a big training investment. I've got plenty of farmers who go out there and spray over the top of plants because they're just a bit rip shit and bust. So we train our guys basically, and I'll give this advice for anyone here is, you use a spray knapsack like a scalpel and not a flamethrower. So you see the edge of your fan on your spray and you guide that around the edge of the plant as you go. You don't just sort of sit there and spray willy-nilly. There's obviously training as well, so all of our guys out doing releasing are GrowSafe certified. We've got 2 registered chemical applicators as part of our team. So, good practice around chemical handling and correct usage is really key. So cool. There, we talk about that manual release, and you can see sort of what I'm doing there. There's actually a video on our YouTube. So yeah, if you want to jump on and have a look at that, if you just type in Restore Native, I think it's YouTube/Restore Native NZ. Look at our videos, or just type in manual release. You'll see, see what I do, basically pulling the grass away. Yeah, peeling away, stomping. As I said, following up with a spray release means you've got the grass away from the plant, and you've killed that grass and turned it into compost. It was like, what a great result, only doing the hand release, only half the result. So, there's actually, sorry, go back on that. There's a QR code there. Am I right, Annette, that I can just scan that, check out the video? There you go. She's clever. So yeah, take a picture of that if it's on your screen and you want to watch that video. Otherwise, obviously we'll send this out again, so you'll have the slides to have a look at that. Cool, great work. Cool. So spray release. So we primarily use glyphosate. I'm just going to talk shortly about different spray options, but it's not about creating a massive big thing around the tree. It's about sort of creating enough space that tree's not going to get swamped by the grass growing next to it. So if it's a smaller tree, you maybe spray a little bit wider so that if the grass falls down, it's going to fall on top of it. And just spraying that arc around what we call the competition zone. Now, you're far better to wind up with a few blades of grass or a little bit of weed growing up next to the tree than you are to have gone a little bit too far the other way and have sprayed the tree itself. You don't need to kill every blade of grass to have a really effective release. If you kill 80% of the grass around that tree, it is 80% better off than it would be otherwise. You can clearly identify it. If you're doing your own releasing, little and often works really well. Go out and don't try and get too close to the tree for a start. Spray a bit around the outside. Then if you come back in a few weeks' time, you've got a dead patch and you can actually just stomp down the stuff next to the tree and spray that really easily. And then, teach people to suck eggs here, but, calm, dry conditions. There are options around shields. So some people like to put a cone on. We actually started out using a shield where we cut the side out of a 20-litre bucket and put it on a standard, and you push that up against the tree, and then you could spray and go around the other side and spray again. The problem we found, I see that our guys just got a little bit complacent with that. The shield would protect you from everything, so you didn't have to be careful. But there might be a bit of branch of that tree around the edge of the shield, and you accidentally spray that, and bugger, it's sort of too late. So that's why we went for the mode of treat it like a scalpel and not a flamethrower. So yeah, again, careful with spray. But yeah, we'll talk about those chemicals. So how do I say, 80 to 90% of the time we'll be releasing with glyphosate. It just gives a broad control. Like, a lot of people use Haloxy because it's quicker, and there's a sort of how do I put it? If you're just out there to make money, you use Haloxy Flop and you just go hard and you spray as many spots as possible and charge people by the spot. It's not our way of doing things. Haloxy Flop is a grass-specific herbicide. So if you've got any broadleaf growing in around those plants, you've got any thistles coming through, you've got things like chicory that are present often in cultivated pastures, docks, anything like that, they're not going to die. So that's why glyphosate's better. It actually kills everything. Haloxy is only taking the grass out. Look, there's an argument that, hey, grass is the number one problem, so therefore if you kill the grass, that plant's 80% better off, and it was quicker and cheaper to do it that way. That's fine, but there is a point to that. But I think the broad control is a good way of doing it. So when we talk about Haloxy, it's a product on the shelf like Galant has Haloxy Flop as the active ingredient. You can actually spray that over top of some plants. So you can spray Haloxy Flop straight over top of a Manuka or Carnuka, the woody stem trees. But if it so much as touches the edge of a toy toy or a cabbage tree, you'll kill it. So you've got to be pretty careful. Anything that's in that grass family, it'll take it out. So we've got to be careful there. Just got another question. Could you please glyphosate is currently banned or restricted in New Zealand? Great question. Glyphosate is not banned in New Zealand. There we go. In the EU, I think it's coming up against a bit of issue, but no, it is widely available for sale here. It is still a chemical. You got to be careful with it, but yeah, very much available. Cool. Well, that's us for tonight. Hopefully I think half an hour of talking about releasing is probably enough. I could bore people a bit more over a few beers, and we certainly talk about it every week at work through the spring and summer around how we can be doing things better. So James, our site ops manager, has helped a lot with this presentation, just making sure we're getting real good in field learnings. Which is quite handy. We've got another webinar coming up next month. So probably specific for people living around Waipa. We're doing a lot of work with environmental benefit lots, which are people retiring and protecting native planting on farms and then getting opportunities to develop land because of it. That'll be what we'll be talking about next month. Always something a bit different to chat about. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, just sing out. I see a couple coming through here. Where are we? Do we not use plant guards over plants? Yeah, really great question. In certain cases, we do use plant guards. Depending on the plant guard you're using, I hate putting more plastic out there in the world. So those cheap plastic plant guards, you can get them in for probably $1. We do use some cardboard guards occasionally. You're up to sort of $1.80, $2 for the cheaper ones, $2.50 for some of the taller, bigger, more robust ones installed. So we'll actually, unless there's another reason to use plant guards, like a whole lot of browsing pressure, we won't use a plant guard because we charge 60 cents for a release spray. Even if you need 2 release sprays, it's $1.20. Half the price of a really good quality plant guard. So that's our personal take on it. Everyone is a little bit different in terms of how they see that. So this is a really good question. Are we mixing residual chemical with our glyphosate when releasing? In most cases, we're not. The residual can, and a particular product we use, can actually impact some of those trees, like the roots in those trees, if you're spraying it over top of. Look, we need to probably do a bit more research in that space, to be fair. It's been a conversation that we've had around that, because there are actually, and probably more expensive products out there that we use in the nursery, which have residual that you can spray over top of some plants. And this is probably our biggest issue, is that we're never really planting a monoculture, so we need to find something that works kind of for everything, rather than just something that works for a handful of things. So we know that turb will work really well with some things, but it won't work really well with everything. So it's a good question. At this stage, we don't use it just because of the diversity piece where it affects some things. Is glyphosate effective against blackberry? Got a bit coming through. Awesome. Great question. Thank you, man. Good to see you here. So blackberry, when it's small and vegetative, so when it doesn't have really hard canes, glyphosate will kill it, which is great. If it is into hard cane second year type blackberry, then you need a brush killer against it. Unfortunately, that brush killer is also going to nail all of your woody natives, so you have to be really selective with it. We do a lot of that spraying and weed control. But first year blackberry, glyphosate will bump it on the head. Second and subsequent, it needs a brush killer. So spray it if you see it. Glyphosate will give it a headache, and then it's there. You can talk to the landowner and get back and actually control it later. So awesome. James was saying uses a traffic cone. Bloody cool. That's clever. Oh yes, I've seen this. I know what you're talking about. Take the cone with you, put it over the tree, spray around the tree, take the cone to another tree. That's bloody genius. That's really good chat. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, that's cool. I like this because we're all a community. We're all here together, which is bloody awesome. Question here: what about gorse? Oh, gorse is a prick of a thing once you've planted trees. So, my best advice for gorse is that you need to get really well on top of it before you plant trees. It's hard. I see it. I go to farms. People go, "Oh, Adam, can I plant into that?" I'm like, "You really want another year of spraying that gorse, just to make sure it's completely nailed." Because gorse, you need a brush killer to kill it. And as I was saying before for James, that a brush killer is going to kill any of your woody stem plants. So you have to be super selective of using that in a planting. But yeah, look, we do a lot of control. We've actually got a project this year that we planted about 3 years ago, but the gorse just wasn't controlled before we got in there, and it's just getting a bit out of hand. So we're going to be in there this summer. Some manual control of gorse, like actually cutting it out, because we're starting to get a bit of a canopy. The myth around gorse being a great nurse crop, it's heard me talk about it before. It is a nurse crop if you've got 50 years to wait, but most farmers don't want to see gorse flowering in amongst their native, or spreading seed again to adjacent areas. So yeah, gorse is a really hard one in that space. Cutting and pasting for odd gorse, yep, bang on. So I was just saying that it's a great chat. So when we do this manual control, we'll be in there, little saws cutting, and we just use a picloram gel straight in it. Yeah, and actually you have to be a little bit careful with picloram if you're around water, but yeah, cut and paste, great idea. Just basically cut that gorse, paste the stump, and you're away. So yeah, that really good solution there. Another one here. Is glyphosate effective against blackberry? Oh yeah, sweet. Yeah, that. So we covered that one. Awesome. Thank you. If we got any more questions, how do we know if a tree is dead as opposed to being in shock? Got a few trees that look dead, but when I scratch the base, it's green. Yeah, yep. That's really good chat. Every species is a little bit different. The bigger the grade of tree you plant, the more transplant shock it gets generally. The slower growing your tree, the longer it'll sit there sulking. So, gee, I've had Remu that we've planted that are 2 years in the ground before they've actually kicked into gear and started growing again. Yeah, it's really hard. Every tree's different. You don't really know until it's gone through another season. At this time of the year, a tree should be showing new growth. If a tree's not showing new growth in the spring, yeah, most likely it's dead. Like you say, as you snap it, snap that tree, and if it's like a lignum in it, once it's gone dead and hard, then yeah, it's gone booger. But yeah, the good thing about being out in the spring is that you'll see the growth coming through over springtime because they're all sort of fired into it from there. So awesome. Another question through. Any other questions? Fire them through. Any recommendation for bamboo? Yeah, far out. It's a hard one. We've actually got a stand on our farm that we're currently controlling, and we've thrown the kitchen sink at it. We've been pasting stumps. Look at glyphosate concentrate. Yeah, we've cut it down and then pasted stumps, and then we're hammering the regrowth. Yeah, different strokes, different folks there. It's a mongrel thing, but you can't take any time off with bamboo. You can't, like, we actually made a mistake. We made really good progress on this big clump because it's coming in through some of our native, and we didn't do any control for 1 year, and we came back and we almost were back to square one. So it grows so fast that you just need to keep at it. But yeah, cutting it and pasting the stumps is most effective. But yeah, once it's away, yeah, it is that manual control. So yeah, we always, where we can, you spray something because it's cheaper and easier and faster. But sometimes manual control is all you've got. So yeah, not ideal. Not ideal. Okay, well, looks like all the questions for tonight. you can get me, send me an email, adam@restorenative.co.nz. There's my email there. Look, just sing out. Even if if you don't want to use our service professionally, you've just got some questions. You can feel like you know me. You've seen me now. Just be like, "Hey, bro, here's a picture of my thing. What do you reckon?" Um, I get like buddy 5 of those emails a day, and I love them because it's really cool seeing passionate people out there doing stuff. And yeah, we're keen as to help. So yeah, just drop me a line anytime you like. But yeah, obviously we do offer a service releasing along with all of our other plant supply, planting, etc. So if you're involved with a project or you've got friends or family, anyone out there with a project, just sing out if you'd like some hand with some releasing or any advice. We're here to help. So another QR code there. You can jump straight to our website. We're obviously through the end of planting season now. We are tidying up the last of our planting next week, and we're pretty well sold out of plants for the year. But we're busy ordering through next year now and sort of firing up. So now it's going really good. So if your project's planned for next year, sing out. And if in the meantime, any questions, any ideas for other things you'd like us to run webinars on or anything at all, just let us know. But have a bloody great Thursday night and an awesome weekend, teams. Try and stay dry tomorrow. It'll be a little bit hectic, and we'll see you again next time.